Hey guys, what's going on? Friday market breakdown, and markets have extended a huge amount. Okay, Friday's usually quite a good day. It used to be a day where I never used to want to trade, but looking at it now makes sense. Right, Friday pairs shape up, volatility comes in the market. Just need to understand the markets a bit more. So let's have a little look at the DXY. So on the DXY, what we can see is that price is now declined. We're looking at this inflection point. If we do push aggressively to the downside, it's more than likely we're coming back down to this low. However, this is still a possibility, looking at something like this to make its way to the high, it's very possible. Look, what we're looking at is potentially price to do its thing, make its way back up here, and then we're up here, and then we can sell. That's actually a lot better in terms of a sell than what we would have had before with the aggressive move up and then had this. So looking at it in context, everything happens for a reason. It's looking pretty good. Positioning is not the most easiest to look at for this on the DXY, because we're still in this sort of corrective little area. We're coming from an impulse. If we remove this, and we remove that line up there, and if we just don't look at this line here and we understand this, we have a strong impulse, and from that impulse we're creating something like this. We can still sell off and have something equal to. So that's the one thing that I would say just be very aware of, that we could create a flag and then come into this low as well. This is a very good area for be looking at along as well, but stay very neutral, because we don't really know until the market has really given us a clear sort of indication of what's going to happen. So I wouldn't start jumping into a position just based on one candle. I would just wait for some solid confirmation. Price can just aggressively start moving up, create this, and then go. So understand that this is obviously something that is worth waiting for when looking for an upside push. We have to understand that even though we've moved down here, we can create something like this and still sell, create some in-depth structure there. Entry sort of criteria is a little bit difficult, but remember, we haven't got really any sort of inflection point for quite a while, so you could probably opt in for a tighter stop loss there. That's just basically just demonstrating it on the DXY for the short, but looking at it, it is looking like this could be a pullback, a reversal area where we could see market coming up to its high. We just have to wait patiently and see. JP225 still on its level of extension. We didn't quite get it. As we can see, we were looking for something a little bit smaller. And then as I was analyzing this, I saw it just came to a correction, which just lowers the probability massively. And now it's just become one large sort of corrective area, as we can see over here. I wouldn't even touch that now, because looking at it, we have this strong impulse, larger correction. We had a smaller correction over here. It's now just moving in continuation to the upside. So just be patient with this. Eventually we'll see something. I think for now, just don't even waste your time focusing too much attention on this, because it's not going to shape up anytime soon. We do have this inflection point which you cannot cross off the board, and just understand that there is this area as well. If we zoom out a little bit more and look at it on hourly, we can also see this as a factor, that we have this sort of expanding, and then we can just evaluate from there. But more so, I'm not going to really get sucked into this trade at the moment. I'm going to just wait patiently, because like I said, we're still in this very corrective sort of this movement here, and with this very corrective price here, even if it's sold, it's very possible that we could just still come back up, sell off. There's so many variations, but more so it's looking more positive for the long than the short right now. So I would wait patiently for that one. The structure is looking pretty good. We are getting that final squeeze higher, so it's only a matter of time until we start trading back down. Euro USD, as we looked on the DXY, it's very much possible that we could either move to the high, or we can maybe even retrace from these sort of areas. But looking at it now in hindsight on the Euro USD, it's not really the sort of typical trade I'm looking for. I mean, it's got possibility, it's got probability, but because of that strong push up, we could just easily make continuation here and go to the upside. So you have to understand those if you are looking for positions. I would not short that in any reason at all. Daily is looking strong bullish. We're moving up with aggression on the Euro USD. Don't FOMO on this. We just look at these small inflection areas, but nothing really just sticks out and says, hey, this is a reversal point. I think more so it's looking like it could just continue to the downside at this point. So remember to just stay sharp and understand that, when this does turn around, you'll be on the right side of the market. Just preserve your capital for the good trades. Don't jump into the ones which are unnecessary. But if you are looking at it on the Euro USD, then obviously what you would be looking at for is a solid push down flag, and then something larger would appear, and then we could potentially make it to that low and then see what happens. But like I said, it's very possible that we won't see that anytime now, but it's not a problem because we do have this sort of 1, 2, 3 up here, and perhaps maybe we always just should have seen it like this and remove this free line, look at it for what it is now. Would you be surprised if you saw this come up here, create a 1, 2, 3 and then sold off? In some ways that's a lot better, and coincidentally we have this little point up here. So I think something like that is now turned out to be something very, very nice. It's just somewhat level of disappointing, I suppose, that we didn't get the commitment over here to continue to the downside, but creating something larger like this does make sense. However, this does give me that sort of feel that this sort of squeeze could just push with aggression to the high over here, and then we might just get even more difficult for position. But knowing that these are possibilities, would you put down a long position now if you saw a good long position? Like if this shaped up and there was a little bit more to it, not just this little tiny squeeze. I think that's more so of a trap in my opinion. But if we saw something like that, it came up, came back down, went back up, would you then hesitate on a trade? So who knows? We just have to wait and see, but definitely looking nice with long position. And then we have GBP USD, which also had that extension. I think across the board we're seeing a lot of this right now, where we're seeing price just really, really developing. I think personally, let's just quickly remove that. I would be patient with this because we are just pushing above these highs. Wait for price, see what happens. If price does dramatically just drop off, comes back down here, we could look for an entry to the short and then literally play that through, see what happens. But more so I'm thinking it's not my typical sort of trade here, but this sort of expanding jumps out to me where I'm looking at something like that. But like I said, it's not my typical sort of trading pattern. It's just something that I would understand that is a possibility right now. We are trading very close to it. If we do get that and we get an immediate drop off, going to push here and a flag, perhaps maybe there's enough of a trade to get to this low here. We'll have to wait and see. But that's basically what I'll be looking at for this. I would look more so for a solid push down, continuation, and then once we break below these lows, look for that larger flag and then go with that. See how that goes. EuroCAD. EuroCAD, similar situation. I'm still not crossing off the short. I think the short is still there. It just needs to let the market do what it needs to do. It's probably just pulling some liquidity in the market. Would not be surprised if we did kind of correct up here, come back down, or not even that, we actually create something like this. Sorry, come back down. And then we created, something more so evolved. And then we looked at it and we were like, okay, there was some structure into that. And then we drove into maybe this point here, and then that sold off. And then we kind of see left shoulder, right shoulder sort of vibes for this larger picture. So that's something that I would pay attention to, and just understand that the higher time frame is there as well. We haven't tapped into that low just yet, but it's very possible that we could be creating something like this to then drive that momentum into the low, and then see this as a head and shoulders, which if we take this to the low, and we see that, and let's say we drive it from outside this potential pattern, or even from the low, which I think is more so probable. Yeah, we can see that it kind of drives into this sort of zone here. So I think this would be more so the target zone that you'd be looking at, which I think is a phenomenal movement, looking at it. But it's more than likely and more than possible that, you know, we may not get all the way down here. We just have to trade what we see, take a signal from the market, and more than likely we probably won't be holding the trade all the way down to that point. We'll probably be out of the market for some level of decent percent, but we'll wait and see. But if we have, like I said, right shoulder, if we get something like this, it'll be very, very nice. GBP yen, as well, I think similar situation to what we were looking at with the other pairs. There's just no sort of determination now of this stopping. You know, we've really cleared that high. I think personally, like strong daily momentum from the high, it's not looking like we're going to be returning anytime soon, I'll be honest with you, unless we get some major news kick in and we just drop aggressively. I mean, you know, personally, I don't really see this as this at all now. That was the only sort of one thing I was looking at, but right now it looks like we're going to aggressively move to the high. So I would personally change my bias at this point and just look for something which could be decent. Pull back. Do we get a 1, 2, 3 into there? Create something. It could even be up to this point, and then sell it, push off. Obviously I'm not looking for something too crazy, but we could also, you know, move up like this, and then I think more so that sort of structure would be nicer. And yeah, that would be the trade that I would look for to go for the long. I think GBP yen is a long trade at this point. We're not seeing the shorts come into the market just yet, but be sharp with it. Management should be on point. And I think New Zealand US dollar is now looking a little bit better. I mean, just personally don't really like it at the moment. I was a bit disappointed because I was looking for too much, so I kind of read into it too much, and I was looking for, you know, price to kind of just trickle down. There was this where I think we evaluated this, and then the small correction just after it, which was here, and then those were the trades. And I think personally these are not bad positions. More so I really like this one, but it was just a part of this massive corrective move, this sort of section here, and it was just looking like a short position to continue to the downside to make that final push for potentially the 1, 2, 3. But anyway, we're getting that correction to the high now. We need to just take a message from the market and understand that, you know, we're making our way back up potentially. It can turn around and get very sharp to the downside. We have to understand that as well, but more so, it's still in this squeeze. We could be just making our move higher, and this could be positioning, very nice positioning at this point. So understand that. We might get a larger correction over here before we move as well. So don't just jump into the market hoping for price to just push through. It'll be more than likely we stall for a bit, create some structure, and then we go with it. Aussie New Zealand, phenomenal position on the table here, man. I completely missed it, forecasted it, everything, just missed it. So if we go back and we actually look at it like, I just said that. So if we go back and look at this, and we can see that we had this larger correction area. So we just remove this, and basically as we kind of got to this point here, I was looking to see if we would decline. So if we pushed up, push back down, create a flag and start coming back down, or we create a large flag to the upside. So what we can see over here on the hourly, and this is where it gets quite nice, to be honest. So we can see that we had this little inflection point over here where we were looking for that larger flag just a bit higher, but it's fine. We pushed down a little bit more aggressively, and then as we came in here, we actually retraced and created a Morningstar. Now, this was a corrective price action to the low. I guess it wasn't the easiest to read between the lines, I'll be honest with you, but what I am looking for, and I don't think we might get it, but if price does come down, taps into that as a 1, 2, 3, that becomes a larger flag in itself, then maybe at that point there we can then see this as opportunity. But looking at it now, it looks like that aggression, that momentum, just going to come into these highs and then possibly have that sell-off. So I think one major thing from this week is just, really understanding the possible and the probable. We're seeing across the board a lot of these structures were due to play out, but they didn't. They extended a lot further, and they're now moving and creating something a lot different. It was not only the fact of probable and possible, but it was more so the fact of understanding the variations of what could potentially happen next. So if there was any major lesson to be taken this week, I think that would be it. It would be just understand the probable and the possible, and don't just, don't get upset because something didn't play out. Like, this can easily get here, and then you're like, okay, cool, I've waited let's say 3 weeks. You've waited 3 weeks for it to get here, and then all of a sudden it does that. Don't be disappointed. Now you just have to wait for the next bit, which is over here. But you'll be so much happier that you waited and you didn't just jump into a trade there. Or if you did take 1% loss, that's fine. And then your next trade is up here. And then if you do take that and it starts to run, aren't you going to be so much happier that your patience paid off at that point? Otherwise, what could have happened, and this has happened to me many times before, honestly, so many times, and it's unfortunate, but I think it happens to the best of us, is price gets here, pushes down, you take a trade, just because you saw it push down and it comes back up, and then you're like, okay, maybe it's a mini double top, and it comes down again, and you take another trade, and then all of does this, and then it's up here, and then you say, okay, and then now it's dropped all the way down here, and you're like, okay, I'll take a trade, and then next thing you know, it's back up here. Hey, listen, we've all been a victim of something like this. Okay, you have a simple plan and a process, and you need to follow it. Okay, if you have in your plan you're waiting for this, and you had the retrace, don't take the retrace. You're waiting for the flag. You said you'll wait for the flag. You need to be disciplined and patient to wait for that. Okay, that's what you said you'll wait for. That's what you've tested. That's what you understand. That's what you do. Okay, now if I say that I'm only going to take pin bars, for example, right? Then 1 hour pin bar. So I see over here, and pin bar is a candlestick, just like this one over here, the spread one here. And if I say, okay, I'm only going to take it this high, I'll wait for it, and do I get it? Yes, there's one over here. So I'll take this one on the high. Okay, that's my trade. That's it, done. Okay, then the next one, I have another little high over there, which pinpointed, and yeah, there's another one over here. They don't always play out, and you have to understand how to use them. Obviously, we have very corrective price action leading up to this, and some structure as well. These are the sort of confluences you want to be looking for when you're taking a trade. But then you have this pin bar on the second touch, understanding that we can get a 3 touch, which we did get. And then for this one, easily it ran around about 5.5%. I would say you'd be out the market roughly around about, personally, you should be out about 4.2 at least, around about there. So as price kind of pushed out here, maybe you would have been out around about here, to be honest, 2.7 with that. I don't think you would let a 5% position pull all the way back over here, and then you'd be locked in, break even, and sitting there. It's not very likely. But anyway, that's that. And then yeah, we just wait for this one now. So understand that there's that possible and probable. I think more so now, let's just draw on that structure we just saw, this one, and then let's draw this little hook point over here, and then we just wait patiently. It's very close to the high though, so I would not be surprised if we did in any way kind of get over here and made our way back up here. Would not be surprised, but understand that this is clear in sequence with this larger structure. Impulse, very corrective, nice middle section there, impulse correct there, looking for that short position back into there, at least to the minimum of this area we're looking for. So if it does come into here and then does something a little bit like that, fine, whatever, let it do its thing. But we know from here to here is what we're looking for as a simple play for this. So that's what I'll be looking for on Aussie New Zealand. Moving on to the wildcards. Okay, so wildcards are looking very interesting. We had a small little sort of corrections on the way up, nothing of major interest to me. AJ, we were looking for the short, we haven't quite got it at this point with this momentum. We're seeing it across the board with a lot of the yen pairs. Like I said, it's not ready yet. Just mark on the high, you can set an alert and wait for it. I would say the reason for setting on the alert is just because look at that momentum we're seeing. You might just be busy doing something else, looking at another trade, and then this will shape up. And trust me, if this gets to this point, you're going to be wanting to be looking at this chart really and truly, because honestly, like, this is a very, very good area to be in, to be honest. Not only there, like, we can just aggressively move to our next points, etc., etc., but we're looking at it on the higher time structure, and look at that aggressive move. You know, we had all of this accumulation from 2022 for a whole year, essentially. Yeah, pretty much almost a whole year we've been sitting in here. And now we're pretty much coming from September all the way back down to here, which, yeah, honestly, it's been almost a full year where we've just literally been correcting. And then this moves straight up. So would not be surprised. Keep an eye on that, because more than likely we could push up, come back down. Next thing you know, we have this. And I think that would be a phenomenal piece of structure to be looking at, so pay attention to that. Also, on the other hand, remember, patterns like to repeat themselves. So knowing that patterns like to repeat themselves, it's always useful to use tools like this just to understand your structures a bit more. Right? They don't always shape up to be the same, but near enough the same, and you could see something like that. So opposed to price coming back down and breaking this low again, we might actually see price kind of just tap into sort of this area and go something similar to this, or it could be quite similar to a different pattern, but it's always good to just kind of analyze and look at pattern recognition across the board throughout different pairs. The next one I'll be looking at is Aussie US dollar. Aussie US dollar, I'm still looking for the short. So we've only just broken above this expanding, which is still very good. On the 4 hour, we are getting that momentum to the upside, and we are seeing that across the board with a lot of these pairs. DXY is looking like it's continuing quite aggressively to the downside. So with Euro USD going long, DXY going short, we could potentially see AU still going long, and we have to understand that it's just part of the game. So what could this now become? Well, this could easily become something like this, and then rather than kind of just, you know, guessing where the line is, you can just duplicate it and stick it on the high and just keep something like that, and then we can see that we could be trading into some of these areas. You know, this is possible as well, to be trading into these areas here. So looking at something like that, we have to understand that it's very possible that this could now become something more so like a pattern to the upside, unfortunately, for a lot of people who were looking for the short. It is what it is. You know, we just have to be patient and understand that if this is the structure that we're going to be looking at, and price is going to be making its way here, that's going to be a monster of a move. And then if we get that back into this low to go long, honestly, come on, like, it's a no-brainer. But I think that's unlikely. It's very unlikely at this point. We don't know, because we don't have any confirmation. We have to wait and see how price gets there. But seeing how price is breaking aggressively and moving, we're not seeing any signs of a short position. So the only time I'll be looking for the short is if we do get a clear push down, a flag, and we go. That's the only time I'll be looking for it. More than likely right now on the low time frames, what we'll be seeing is something like this. 1, 2, 2, 3, boom, ready to go. And we're off for the high. And we could still come back and revisit this area, so be on your game with management. Obviously understand that DXY is in a very volatile state, but with the pushing and aggression we're seeing, it's very possible. And then understand that we have these sort of inflection points. More so I'm interested in this one, because it somewhat meets with this sort of zone that I'm looking at. So this is more so what I'll be focusing on for the long, to see how price approaches this section and the next. I think it's easy to draw on something like that as well, and just understand that, you know, price can tap into this, extend, come back down, whatever. But I'm going to keep it quite parallel for now, but don't get married to this one because it's not very clear. I would just say understand that you have this ray line and that ray line, and keep it as simple as that. And I think then you'd be a little bit better off than trying to guess where the top or bottom is of structures. New Zealand CAD also, it was a little bit disappointed. I think it was a bit like the New Zealand US dollar one for me. Was looking for better momentum, but maybe we're getting a larger flag here. It's very possible this how the price has been quite corrective. Do we create something like that? And if we do create something like that, then we can take a message from the market at a better time and see what happens. So it does need some time to develop. If we are going to create something like that, that could be easily 2 months, a month throughout July, creating this larger structure, and then towards some point in July, maybe the 3rd week, 4th week, we might see something. Who knows? But you know, as we know with these New Zealand pairs, when they sell off quite aggressively. So that's one that I think we'll be very, very cautious with. Understanding that we have this larger corrective price action here, we can still move to the upside with aggression at some point. I'll definitely be staying sharp for this because I don't want to be shorting this at any point unless I have these larger supporting structures. At the moment, it is looking like it could go long. So for that reason, I'd wait patiently. USD yen as well is coming into that inflection point. I think this is something that I do like, because if the DXY does make it to that low and then reverses, we'll see this happening over here. So if I just invert that and we see this as that inflection point, we can see on the DXY, which is inverted. Yep, there we go. And if it does come into that low there, and then we push up, we could see something good. We could see some good price action come into there for the short. So literally waiting patiently right now for this. We kind of had that little mini scoop here. Not quite what I'm looking for at this point. I'm going to wait for it to come tap into this high, push down, create flag. Simple, easy, and sustainable. That's what you're looking for. Simple, easy, sustainable price action. And the next one is basically, this is EA. So EA is now entering this sort of amber zone where we could start to push down, but we could create something a little bit larger at the top of this section here to drop in. But we have to understand that once we've broken this red one, we can create larger corrections in this area. We've cleared the green zone, which in my opinion is usually quite the easiest part to trade. In no means was this easy, I'll be honest with you. There was nothing easy about this sort of price action. It was just literally like this, where I suppose you had this as the middle section for this sort of pattern here, and then we pushed in. There wasn't no clear entries and the patterns weren't very clear for me. Don't know about you guys if you're able to take any good trades on this, but for me, absolutely not. Wasn't able to really take advantage of this. So hey, it is what it is, man. But you know, at the end of the day, we move forward. And yeah, so that was probably the best trade in there. There was some smaller time frame ones that we did see, and obviously I did capture some trades in there. I did actually get this trade, but it's so unfortunate due to mismanagement that I kind of came out of it. My fault, lesson learned. You know, got to hold the winners. Just, you know, it happens. And easily 13% right now with massive potential. So, like I said, guys, there's so much potential in the market right now for a lot of these pairs. Positioning yourself correctly is so wise, so good. Understanding the bigger time frame picture, you know, it can really help with pushing things. Also, we have to understand that we have something like this, and if we take it from the break, you know, we could be pushing into this low before we even potentially reverse create something a little bit larger, as we mentioned. So we're coming into that amber zone now. We are creating these larger corrections. This is accumulating a lot of price just on the low. So it becomes a little bit neutral at this point, but I think more so for the aggression to the downside. So I would stay sharp for that one. If we do by any means start going like this, then we can take a message from the market and say, okay, fine, we're going to get short and we've got some nice structures to support us. But like I said, EA hasn't really presented me with any clear structures, only a few ones on the smaller time frames, but I was looking for some nice larger time frame structure. It is what it is. And last but
not least, we have Euro GBP. So as we can see with Euro GBP, we have come into this low, but we haven't quite got that commitment just yet. We did have a little bit of a push off, but wasn't really enough at this point. I think at the moment we can see that we are kind of channeling in this light here. I would be looking for a strong push down, aggressive push up, continuation, and that's literally as simple as I would look for it on this. Understand that as we're seeing across with a lot of pairs, we have to remain a little bit neutral as well, and understand that this can still move to the downside. We don't have to come up. Don't marry the bias, but understand the possible and the probable, and essentially this is it. So major lesson for this week is obviously the possible and probable. You need to keep that front of mind. Understand that, you know, patience is so important. I also face that sometimes, that, you know, you're patient, you're waiting, let's say 3-4 weeks, structure then develops, it's more than enough, it's perfect, every single element of a great trade is in it, and it just doesn't play out. It's how you react to those situations that determines if you're going to be successful or if it's going to take you longer to be a successful trader. So that's a major lesson that I've had to take this week as well. And yeah, I did take an accountable loss, to be honest. I took an accountable loss on EuroCAD, which, once again, my fault, and Euro USD. And, you know, overall I was running around about 6%. I just took the decision that I wanted to hold them on break even and see them play through, because many times previously, and I'll just use EA as just a small example, you know, I've looked at a trade and I've taken it, and I don't know, I make a very, let's say, emotional or psychological decision where I'll take a decent position, and let's say that I took the position here, then it got to around about, you know, 2.5%, and I got aggressive, and I probably walked away with about, let's say, 1.5, right? And then price came up just a little bit further, or 1%, let's say, and just tagged me out, and then kind of just went off, and then you're kind of shooting yourself in the leg. Now, there's two ways, you know, it's sustainable, because absolutely you can take a position like this once, and then you can wait for the next one, which potentially shapes up just a little bit further. Obviously you wouldn't have seen this in hindsight, because you wouldn't have known that that was the point. But anyway, you have then you have this one over here, and then you could have taken the phase line on that for sure. Yeah. And then you have this one over here, where you'd be looking for this as the high, understanding that this is the possible, and then we had the drop off there. And then I think when we kind of just aggressively pushed away, you could have then opted in for that trade, where, you know, I think it's easier to see trades and take trades like this when you already know they're going to play out. But when they're not playing out, obviously it's not the easiest to take them, for sure. And then obviously, you know, you'd be out of the market. If you held it break even, for sure, okay, you could have had that 8% position. But then again, if you ran roughly around about, let's say, 7% or 7.5, would you really let it run back to 3.5 or even 2%, or even, you know, just, yeah, you have to ask yourself these questions. Like, you're running 7%, you're going to lock in roughly around about 6. It's better for your account. And then by the time something like this does shape up, and then, you know, you get this sort of trade, we wouldn't have caught that trade anyway. That's, you know, it's not the best trade that everyone would have caught. But, you know, then you wait, you plan, you get the next one, and then when the next trade comes, we take it from there. There probably would have been no more trades for me personally. And I think the only trades I would have taken is either this small flag here, which comes with a lot of risk as well. We have to understand that. This one that I placed up here, and then this one that I took. And then obviously there was one further up, but not my typical trade. But like I said, all comes with experience, all comes with what you want to trade, what you want to look for. Who knows, maybe in like 6 months time, I probably would never take those trades. You know, perhaps maybe I'll be only taking a different type of trade. We evolve as traders, we change, we have to adapt to the market, but at the same time, we take a message from the market. There might be a time where the markets become very erratic and only taking reduced risk entries, or flags like this where strong impulse, tight easy flag, take to the upside. This obviously isn't my typical trade. I would wait for something a little bit larger, but there's nothing to say that this isn't enough for it to go. I've seen it many times, especially when you look at pairs like the Germany 40, Germany 30. Over here you can see small push, tight flag down, push, tight flag up. We know it's quite common and quite profitable in this sort of pair to see things like that. Over here as well. I mean, I can draw these all day. I suggest, if you want to trade a pair, it's good to understand these, because when you see them, you're not going to hesitate next time. You're going to understand that, okay, cool, I've seen this a few times, and when they do come, they become quite profitable and they move quite quick. So I can capitalize on them. So you can take advantage of those sort of situations. And I think as a trader, learning these sort of bits can help. I'm not saying that you're always going to catch them, but when they do shape up, you're not going to hesitate. You're not going to be worried. You're not going to be concerned, and so forth. And let's just size that up in terms of a percentage, what you could have made easily. You could have run around us. Let's just say you were in the market. I guess when it aggressively pushed down here, you could have aggressively started protecting yourself by 5% there. Same situation up here. I think this one more so, if it pulled back, you could have just left it with a 1% maybe. Who knows? But it did run for around about 6%. So if you were in there, you could have come out with 4.5 possibly, and so forth. Look, there's another one there. They just start popping out to you more and more often, and then the next thing you know, they're everywhere. And then you just end up saying, actually, hang on, I want to trade this pair because I'm seeing opportunity everywhere now, where a minute ago you weren't seeing any opportunity and you were thinking, it's just so messy, it's so crazy, it's going up and down, up and down, up and down. But then all of a sudden you're understanding the chart a little bit more and more and more, how they move. And okay, maybe over here it ran about 8%, so you probably would have been out of the market around about 6%. Cool. Even though you're out of the market 6% and it ran 12, doesn't matter. It's about just that growth. And over this period, let's just see, I think this was over a period of, I'm not actually quite sure. Let's see. So from this flag to this flag, we're looking at about almost a month, 25 days, 17 hours. So, hey, look, there was a trade here, there was a trade here, there's trades everywhere. It's literally filled with trades. You can just trade, you can just learn one pair and learn it really well, and you can build up some capital and then move forward. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy.